Okay, I'd like to introduce Ian Shore and Krystal Knapp. Ian Shore is a former clerk in Paramus.
Right.
Okay, and he's retired now, but I think you can tell already by his comments in the gallery that he's actually very, very reasonable, and I think he's very pro open government. Krystal Knapp has been a journalist for how long?
About a dozen years.
Okay, for about, there you go, a dozen years, and she's been making OPRA requests and getting information from public entities and utilizing OPRA for all of that time. So both of them have a great deal of practical experience in handling OPRA requests.
I just have one thing to say.
Of course, just one?
As the GRC gives a statement that they're not responsible for anything, I am not here representing the Municipal Clerks Association of New Jersey. I am here as a private citizen and a retired municipal clerk. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Mr. Shore.
Yes.
When someone submits an OPRA request, what should they be watching out for? Sort of train the members, train the audience on what they should do.
Two words that I would look for are the words any and all. If I saw those, it was too broad. Any and all is not an acceptable word. If you want all the minutes from January 1st, 2001 through December 31st, 2001, that's fine. But any and all minutes is an extremely broad and has been held that way in decisions out there.
Krystal?
I use the word each or every, let's say email from this period of time or minutes, but I had the same thing listed. I don't use any and all. So.
Hey, we agreed.
Yes. So.
How should a records requester deal with the issue of time in terms of document creation? Ian?
What do you mean by document creation?
I want a document that either, let's say I want emails from a certain period of time, or I want minutes from a certain period of time. But I don't know exactly the date. I know that emails are out there, I know that minutes are out there, but I don't know the exact date. Can I give a date range?
I would accept a date range. It is searchable. You have to remember that if emails are sent via a iPad or a tablet or a cellular phone, the odds of having them would be extremely difficult. Although, when I was clerk, I was at a meeting and the state had told everybody that on a BlackBerry device, copies can be sent to the municipal server, thank you, to the municipal server. A copy can, and therefore, I would be able to get that copy. Being the good clerk I was, I notified the borough attorney and sent an email to our IT person and the mayor and council. Council decided not to do anything about it. So those are very difficult to come by because they're not going to give them up. They also could be erased from the phone by the time you ask for it. But yes, that's fine. Just give me a topic of what you're looking for and an approximate time, and we'll go look for it. I would anyway. Some clerks may not. Depends on the clerk.
Would you like to add to that?
I try not to go on a fishing expedition. I try to be as specific as possible in terms of the date. I try to do my homework, maybe ask people, if there's a particular issue I'm looking at, what time frame they think an email would have come across, or what time frame I should get the closed session minutes from. And that just makes things a lot easier. You don't want to delay your request at all, or make I'll give an example. I requested emails for a week-long period from the police chief who abruptly retired, and I got those back within 7 days, but then I later requested the chief's emails for a month-long period, and I got a call from the clerk that it was going to cost me a few $1,000s. They had just printed out 12 reams of paper, and if they would have talked to me first, I could have said, okay, I'll narrow that down. But
Krystal, when you submit an OPRA request, what elements do you make sure are in your OPRA request?
Well, first of all, I always cite both the Open Public Records Act and the common law. And then if it's a case involving minutes, like closed session minutes, I also cite the Sunshine Law. That's very important. Then I list what documents I'm requesting in detail, including the dates. But I do my homework on that too. Sometimes I know what the document is I want exactly, like a dispatch tape or a budget, something like that. But other times I've been trying to get police investigatory records, which most of them are excluded under OPRA, but something called the Internal Affairs Index is a public record. Well, I call it one thing, but some police departments call it Internal Affairs Summary. And I was rejected because I called it the index, and if I would have used summary, I would have gotten what I wanted. So it always pays to do your homework on that. And then I also state how I want the record, which is really, really important. I try to find out what format the record is in. I don't want someone to say, as I've been told many times, that's them having to compile something for me, which is not their job. They'll say they have I have to request a specific record. So I try to find out what form the record is in. Of course, as a poor journalist, I try to keep my costs low, and so I always try to get things in electronic form if they're available. And I also try to inspect things too. I don't want to create extra work for myself or for the records custodian when I could just go in and inspect certain things. And then it's really important to say how much you're willing to pay for certain records. In this one case, the Princeton Township with the emails was going to charge me several $1,000s. We had a good relationship before that where I could get copies of things all the time, and they said, oh no, there's no fee for you because you're a journalist, but then to be thrown back. So now as a practice, I always say, if there's anything beyond $25, let me know first, that kind of thing. And then lastly, I always say, if you are rejecting the request, please do so in writing. I just would like to have a record of why. I've had phone calls with people. I've worked with a lot of really great clerks. One in Princeton just retired, and I was like practically crying at her retirement party because I was going to miss her so much, and we stay in touch. But I have a clerk right now who's, and that clerk is in a difficult political situation. There's a lot of political pressure. The governing body makes her forward all of my requests to them via email, so they're actually approving what she can and cannot release to me. It goes to the lawyer and the entire council, and I really feel for her. But so on the phone, she said things, and then later, oh, I never said that. So I just want a written record, so I state that in my request.
Ian, would you add anything to that?
Yes. Let me say this about clerks so everybody understands clerks, and then I also want to touch this last thing that you talked about. Clerks are appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the governing body for a 3-year term. They are then hoping to do the job properly and then get their second appointment, which would then give them tenure and take them out of the political arena. So, a clerk that's in their first term is going to play that political game. That said, I was a clerk for 17 and a half years. I was sued by my municipality. I was directed by the borough attorney to submit all OPRA requests to him before responding. I sat back, I looked at it, I thought about it, I discussed it, and I said, you know, if I'm going to win the battle, I have to prepare a good defense. So I said, I'm gonna try it. And I proceeded to try it. I will tell you, I was late on every OPRA request that was out there. Not only was I late, the statute is very clear. The statute says immediately, but not more than 7 days for a response.
Business days.
Huh?
Business
days, thank you.
I've heard days a couple times say it's business days.
I'm sorry,
Important
it's
difference.
business
No.
days. But bills, contracts, and it cites certain things are immediate. Now, a gentleman comes in and makes an OPRA request to see the file, to view a file downstairs in the Board of Adjustment for a hearing that night. We had to deny, we didn't deny it, we had to tell him to come back. He appeared before the Board of Adjustment and publicly said that. The next day, I stopped the process. I was sued. I will tell you that through a very wonderful general attorney, Mr. Gutman, who took the case, the Bergen Record, who came in as an amicus, and the Municipal Clerks Association as an amicus, we won the lawsuit. So there is a case on file. The rest of it, there's more history to it, but not for today. So.
Yeah, he goes, you remember earlier in the day, we spoke about how the clerk sort of has a non-delegable duty. That includes, attorney review. And so Ian's case was really about, can this attorney, force, attorney review of all the OPRA requests. Now, sometimes clerks will ship them off for attorney review, but, that's just a delay. And I don't know, Ian, maybe you can answer this, but, were you qualified to read an OPRA request and determine whether or not the request touched on information that was confidential or privileged, or were you qualified to do that?
In certain respects, yes, but the attorney is used for advice. Now, when OPRA came in, I would get OPRA request. I would get an OPRA request, and we got 3,000 a year, in case anybody's curious. I would look at it. If I had a question, if there was a gray area, I would call the attorney. And the first attorney I had, we would have discussions. I would look at it one way, he would look at it one way, a reporter would look at it differently. But between us, we would come up with something that we felt was an acceptable solution that was within the law and yet released the information if it was a releasable thing. If it wasn't releasable, we didn't. But I would use them as a consultant. If I had a request that I was not happy with and I did not want to write the denial, and the attorney and I agreed that there should be a denial, I had him write the denial, but I was the one who sent it. It's called copy and paste in Word. But it came from me because that's what the law says.
Ian, what went into your determination of whether or not you had to charge somebody a special service charge in responding to their OPRA request?
That's interesting because I hate special service charges. And I used to fight with my finance officer because that's the guy that'd say, we got to get extra money for this. This is too much labor. And I would look at him and I'd say, what do you mean? Well, I have to spend an hour doing this. So spend an hour. get the information. On the other side of the street, I would say, especially to a reporter, you know, the law says you can review the documents and select what you want. Doesn't cost you anything to review.
Princeton Township is trying to charge me $850 for redacting the chief's emails for the month.
That's not a special service charge. That's definitely not a special service charge. It's part of the job. The law says you gotta redact it. If the law says you have to redact it, how can they charge a special service charge? I'd love to argue that one.
Krystal, when folks are assessed a special service charge, you know, what would your advice be to them on how to deal with that?
Well, I asked for a breakdown of what the charge was. Originally, they were going to charge me their technician's fee for retrieving the emails from the server. I think they said it was going to be 8 hours of labor. They also said they were going to charge their senior attorney's hourly fee to redact. I pushed, so it was going to be several $1,000s, and they were going to charge me for every printout, even though I was asking to inspect, because they tried to argue that they had to print them out to redact them, that they couldn't electronically redact, which actually in the custodian's handbook it says they can electronically redact. But I tried to negotiate down, and I've gotten it down to the $850 now, but so that's the deputy clerk's fee, her base pays hourly rate to redact, but I still wrote back to them and said, I think that's unfair, and they haven't responded. So, but I try to find out what's the breakdown, who's doing what work, what's the hourly rate, that kind of thing.
Anything to add to that, Ian?
I received a request from the Bergen Record. I'm sorry, a subsidiary of the Bergen Record, the Town News, which was the throwaway newspaper. And they wanted the police blotter on a weekly basis. They don't have a blotter. So we went round and round over this. Finally, we had a meeting, our attorney, myself, their attorney, and the chief. And the chief says, we could print it out on the computer. Oh, that's good, but it had information on it. So we printed out the first one, and I looked at it, and it was 27 pages for the first week. And there is certain information on there. You have, remember, there's HIPAA compliance that we now have to look at. And when there was an ambulance call, which we had a lot of those, you had to redact, not the call itself, but certain parts of that. So I would spend an hour and a half a week doing it. We didn't charge them for it. It's being, and I said it earlier today, being a partner. You have to partner. The clerk has to partner with the requester has to partner with the clerk. You can't come in and pound your hand, and that's what this particular reporter did. She pounded her hand and pounded her hand, and every request that she came in, it got to the point I virtually denied and made her go through the hoops. It's the only way. Remember, somebody once told me, an attorney once told me in another issue, remember, you're the boss, not them. So I hate using that term. That's why I say you have to partner. But if somebody's pounding, I'm going to become the boss, and I have the control.
Ian, I usually only pound my shoe on the table.
There you go. There you go. But in all seriousness, it's a give and take. The reporter, the clerk, the requester, the clerk.
I always try to work with the clerk. For example, the 7 business days, if they tell me it's really not possible, if I have a good relationship with them, I try to give them some leeway. I try to work with them as best I can. I mean, if I'm not even sure in terms of how to craft the request, I try to talk to them first and explain to them, look, I'm trying to make it easier for you too. I try to do that. I also try to talk to other officials. Even like Princeton has been controlled solely by the Democrats for the last 15 years, but there are always disgruntled people in the political party and on the council. So I try to build relationships with those people, and I get a lot of documents actually without even filing an OPRA request because of those relationships. And then I try to see what's online. I have there are a few state agencies I follow, and I have Google alerts set up for whenever they add an Excel database onto the government website, things like that. So,
Are there any questions? Shoot.
Sitting here stewing on this. Listen, guys. Thank you. All I've been hearing thus far is that when an OPRA request is made, it's supposed to be answered within 7 days. Did I hear that correctly?
business.
Business
days.
days.
Fine, fine. I have never personally filed one. However, I'm familiar with people who have filed OPRA requests, and they're lasting 3, 4, 5, and 6 months with any excuse you can think of. You saying to me the only recourse we have then would be that individual would have to hire an attorney at his or her expense to battle the township council or the Board of Education, who has resident taxpayers' money to fight you.
The statute actually says, and this is a great tool, by the way, it is a readable version of the Open Public Records Act. And you can locate it at the GRC website. That's about the only thing there that's any good is their website. And the statute says, immediate access ordinarily shall be granted to budgets, bills, vouchers, contracts, collective bargaining, wrong one. Unless a shorter period of time is otherwise provided by statute, regulation, or executive order, a custodian of government records shall grant access to the government record or deny a request for access to government record as soon as possible, but not later than 7 business days after receiving the request. I won't finish the rest of it.
Okay.
There's your words.
So, yes, so in effect, that confirms what I'm saying.
No.
You're stonewalling us.
Not necessarily.
By not giving us the information
Okay,
that we're asking for.
let me ask you this question. You send a request
Yes,
on Monday.
okay.
On Wednesday, I send you back a letter of clarification,
Okay.
okay? You send me back a response to that clarification.
Yes.
I look at it. I say, okay, now I know what you want. I'm now into my 5th business day.
Fine.
I then send you a letter that I'm going to need an additional 7 days.
Fine.
Okay, we start. I have to go to the chief financial officer to get that information.
Okay.
I don't control the record. I have no control. It is totally out of my hands at that point.
Okay.
I can't do a thing to help you.
I understand that. But what I'm concerned about is why then should it take 3 months, 4 or 5 months before you actually can get an answer to your OPRA request?
Well, there's no situation that I can think of where it should take 3 to 5 months. So if you're not getting the information you want, and that much time is going by, then it's time to probably file an action.
Yes, and that, may I interrupt you now? Yes, and that is where you, and I have nothing against you personally, as an attorney, would love to take that on. But what about the individual who is just looking for public information that they're supposed to get?
Well, 2 things. First of all, OPRA has fee shifting. So that means that some attorneys will be willing to take the case on a contingency. The second answer is, if you think you have a systemic problem, which I do run into towns, I won't name any by name except Union City, where they just, Union City's a black hole. I can't sue them often enough. You've got to teach them, and sometimes you can teach them by being nice
It's
with
Hudson
them.
County, what do you want?
It's not the clerk either. It's not the clerk. You have to teach them. And if you can't teach them by working with them, then you have to teach them by suing them. And eventually, they'll learn. Now, I'm going to move on. Another question, because we're almost done with this panel, unfortunately. Yes, ma'am.
I recently took a one-day class from the GRC on OPRA, and I was very surprised. Did you know that you can send in an anonymous OPRA
Yes.
request?
It's in the statute.
Very cool.
I do it all the time. I do it to this day. I send them I have a website that's an email address that's anonymous, so they don't know who's asking for the information.
You also don't have to use their form. I've been denied saying I didn't fill out their form, and I prefer to write my own letter or just fill out their form and say see attached. And
I'll tell you what I used to do. I would take them fax, email, walk-in. Walk-in, you had to use the form. But I had, you see, what a lot of people don't realize is the statute also requires the clerk to index all OPRA requests. He's supposed to keep a running index. I ain't keeping an index on 3,000, that, let me tell you. I used to number my forms. So, made it a lot easier all the way around. You got a copy. If, in fact, you emailed it to me, you got a confirmation I received it with a copy of the email of the OPRA request form with your number on it, so that it gave you the reference number. It all depends what the clerk wants to do, how much they want to put into it. There's another clerk in the room who is excellent. She is wonderful. And she believes in open government. Can't tell you who she is. I don't want her attacked.
My question is, if you wanted to submit a OPRA to county government, and since I work for the county, I would like to send it anonymously. How would you do that?
Not necessarily. County clerk may not. The statute doesn't say that. Only in the case of municipal government is the clerk the custodian. Every other division is appointed by the head. So it could be the Board of Freeholders clerk. It could be a clerk within a clerk's office. It could be anybody. I don't know.
However, if you send your OPRA request to the wrong person, that person still has a duty to you, okay? They still have to do something. An OPRA request to the wrong person still incurs an obligation on behalf of the public entity. Their obligation is to either tell you who the right person is or to forward your OPRA request to the right person. So you're not without a remedy. Okay. Well, that's the last place I would send an OPRA request. With boards of education, I send them to the board secretary / business administrator. With counties, I'll go on the website quickly to see if I can identify a county information officer or a county OPRA officer. You know, Morris County has that. They've got an OPRA officer who's excellent. And if I can't quickly find that, I'll look to the form. Not because I'm going to use the form, but if they have an OPRA form and the OPRA form has an email address or a fax address, I'll use that. And that's pretty airtight, Krystal.
in Mercer County, it's the county council who's the custodian for OPRA.
Excellent.
For the lawyers. But yeah, I was going to say look on the website for.
Okay. So we're going to end this panel, and I'll ask a round of applause for our wonderful panelists.